If the US slaps a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, who's really losing? When you hear the term trade war, you probably picture some dry line in a finance report or a complicated economic policy. But here's the truth. Tariffs can shut down factories, cost millions of jobs, and push a major economy to the brink of recession. And that's exactly what's happening in China right now. Even more surprising? Just as things are crumbling across the Pacific, President Donald Trump has announced that he might lower tariffs on Chinese imports at some point. So what's going on here? Why the sudden shift in tone? And what does it mean for the global economy and your wallet? Let's break it all down. According to a CNN report and data from China's National Bureau of Statistics, the country's manufacturing PMI fell to 49.0 in April, its lowest point in 16 months. Since a PMI below 50 signals contraction, this is a clear warning sign that US tariffs are biting hard. Specifically, the US is now imposing tariffs as high as 145% on Chinese imports, an extremely rare move. In response, China has hit back with 125% tariffs on American goods. But the reality is, China's export-heavy economy is feeling the sting far more deeply. Chinese companies are canceling orders, cutting production, and pausing shipments to the US due to soaring costs and mounting uncertainty. New export orders have plunged to 44.7, the lowest level since the peak of the COVID pandemic in 2022. Analysts at Morgan Stanley warn the full impact of tariffs will hit hardest this quarter. And so far, Beijing has yet to roll out a stimulus package strong enough to cushion the blow. In the middle of all this, Donald Trump made a surprising announcement. At some point, I'll lower tariffs, because if you don't, you can't do business with them. He made the statement during NBC's Meet the Press, marking a major shift from his previous tough stance. Trump had once argued that China deserved sky-high tariffs and claimed they would eat those tariffs themselves. But this time, he didn't commit to any timeline. Instead, he emphasized, "I'll set the tariffs. They don't set them, I do." This reveals Trump's consistent view of tariffs, not as a long-term economic strategy, but as a bargaining chip, a big stick in trade negotiations. But does this approach actually work in today's economy? First, let's look at the double-edged impact. While China is clearly taking a hit, economists warn that tariffs don't just hurt the other side. They also hit closer to home, affecting American consumers and businesses. When Chinese imports are slapped with steep tariffs, US companies have two choices: either absorb the extra cost or pass it on to consumers. And in an economy still battling stubborn inflation, that could translate into even higher prices for everything from electronics and clothing to key manufacturing components. But it's not all downside. Take this example. Excel Dryer, a Massachusetts-based company, as reported by CNBC in 2024. Faced with rising tariffs on Chinese goods, they pivoted, shifting from overseas suppliers to domestic ones. The outcome? More US-based manufacturing jobs, even though the switch came with higher costs. So yes, tariffs can speed up reshoring, bringing production back home. But here's the catch: it only works if there's strong policy support and the right incentives in place. But while the US debates costs and benefits, how is China responding? China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has made it clear. There will be no negotiations on tariffs unless the US first rolls back its unilateral measures. The Chinese Foreign Ministry even released a video urging the world to stand up to American bullying. This shows we're in the middle of a long-term standoff between the world's two largest economies, with little sign of a breakthrough anytime soon. This signals something bigger. We're not just looking at a short-term trade dispute, but a long-term standoff between the world's two largest economies with no breakthrough in sight. Trump says he'll reduce tariffs on China at some point, but for him, that point only comes when he secures maximum leverage for the US. That could mean a new trade deal, a supply chain pledge from China, or simply a campaign talking point for re-election. For the global economy, even vague statements like this can cause major ripples. And for American businesses and households, what matters most isn't the exact tariff rate, it's predictability and stability. So what do you think? Will Trump really follow through and cut tariffs? And if he does, would that actually help the US economy? Or is it just another strategic move? When you think of a trade war, what comes to mind? Steel, cars, maybe electronics, industries you can see, touch, and regulate at the border. But what about movies? In a dramatic and unprecedented move, President Donald Trump is proposing a 100% tariff on foreign-made films, claiming they pose a threat to national security. That means any movie shot, edited, or produced outside the United States could be hit with a massive tax just to be shown to American audiences. Think about that for a second. A Netflix original shot in London, with post-production in Vancouver, could now cost twice as much to release in the US. Why? Because it's not made in America. At a time when Hollywood is already reeling, from the post-pandemic box office crash, streaming fatigue, and rising costs, this proposal could be the final blow. But is this really about protecting American jobs, or is it a policy that could backfire on everyone? Let's break it down. Why is Trump targeting foreign films? According to Trump, countries like the UK, Canada, and Australia are luring American productions away with tax breaks and lower costs, hollowing out the US film industry. He's using the same national security argument he once applied to steel and aluminum. And he's not entirely wrong. California alone has lost over 18,000 post-production jobs in just the past 3 years. Studios like Disney and Netflix have increasingly taken their productions overseas. Even as California boosts tax incentives for local filming, it hasn't been enough to stop the production drain. How is Hollywood responding? The reaction? Total panic. The modern film industry is a global machine. Shooting in the UK, editing in New Zealand, doing VFX in Canada. Trump's tariff threatens to blow up that entire model, and there's major confusion. Would a Marvel movie with just a few UK scenes be taxed? What about streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon? Over 60% of their original content is made outside the US, not just to cut costs, but to serve global audiences. If Trump's 100% movie tariff goes into effect, the impact will ripple across the entire film industry. First, American consumers will feel it directly in their wallets. If the tariffs go through, those extra costs will land right in the laps of moviegoers. Expect higher ticket prices. Expect your Netflix or Disney Plus bill to rise. In a time when everything else is already expensive, some people might just walk away from movies altogether. Meanwhile, international film producers, especially in Canada and the UK, two of Hollywood's favorite filming destinations, could face massive disruptions. Places like Canada and the UK, major hubs for American movie production, could take a serious hit. Contracts with US studios might get canceled or renegotiated. That means job losses, studio shutdowns, and a ripple effect in post-production and VFX industries. As for US studios, on paper, this looks like a win for bringing jobs back, but shooting in California or New York costs a fortune. Without new tax breaks or subsidies, studios might just cut production altogether instead of moving it back home. And that's where the real risks start to show. This policy may sound good in theory, but in practice, it comes with some major downsides. Now, let's talk about what could go wrong. First off, it's hard to enforce. What actually counts as a foreign-made film? Is it one scene shot in Vancouver, or maybe just post-production done in London? The rules are pretty vague, and with streaming platforms in the mix, enforcing this could be nearly impossible. Second, there's a real risk of retaliation. We've seen it before. Back in 2018, China pushed back on US film imports after getting hit with tariffs. If the EU or the UK decide to respond in kind this time, Hollywood could take a major financial hit. Just last year, US film exports brought in a trade surplus of over $10 billion. And finally, this could seriously hurt creativity. Smaller studios and indie filmmakers, especially the ones working outside the US, might not survive this kind of policy. And in the long run, it could end up limiting the kind of diverse, innovative storytelling that helped make Hollywood what it is today. So with all these risks on the table, the big question is, what now? Is there still hope for Hollywood? A 100% tariff may sound tough, but it might be more symbolic than strategic. The real long-term fix? invest in domestic infrastructure, train skilled film workers, and offer real tax incentives, just like Canada did successfully. If the goal is to bring production back home, America needs to compete, not just build barriers. Because the film industry isn't like steel or soybeans, it's a global creative chain, and it thrives on flexibility. At the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing. Will this Trump-style Made in America push actually bring Hollywood home, or just backfire? What do you think about a 100% tariff on foreign-made films? Bold move to revive Hollywood, or a dangerous misfire? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more breakdowns on the US economy, trade, and society. See you in the next one.